Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Construction Business Management Tips. In this series, we're currently looking at why construction businesses fail and what can be done to reduce the risk. In particular, today we're going to be discussing not retaining your best people. In a previous session, we looked at how do we hire the best people. Now we're going to look at, well, how do you retain the best people? What are the things that causes the best people to leave is a good place to start. So let's take a look at that. And let's look at some of the reasons why you don't retain your best people. Poor management practices, that's a big one. The first one and the second bullet there, they're really in combination with each other. Poor management practices might include evaluation systems that don't compare equally good employees, manager interactions with their best employees, maybe don't create a positive environment. And probably the biggest reason is the second bullet, which you could have an excellent employee that has a poor relationship with their direct manager. If they're not happy in the workplace, that's not going to be a good situation. And you've got a good employee, that's really a waste. And so you want to make sure that your managers are changed to fully engage with their employees, provide feedback in a positive way. Otherwise, that employee's got options. They're going to leave. Unclear objectives. This is another one. Really good employees, they like to know what they're supposed to be doing. They like to have goals. They like to be able to work towards those goals. So unclear objectives, that's a big negative. Negative feedback. A manager that's always sort of negative with whatever they give back to a really high-performing employee, that's not going to be good in the long run. An environment of fear. Well, we're not living in the 1910s and 1920s or the Industrial Revolution, and you'll find that people really don't put up with that for very long, especially people that have choices. So if you're creating an environment of fear, it may work with some lower end employees that are maybe financially strapped that don't have a lot of choices, but it's certainly not going to work with your best employees. And in the construction industry, we have big shortages of skilled workers. And if we put that kind of pressure on our best employees, soon you won't have them. They'll be elsewhere. Lack of opportunity. And we'll talk about that. So you've got really good employees, but they really don't see that there's too many opportunities for movement within the company. They're going to go elsewhere. And we're going to look at the flip side of these on the next slide of how we turn it around. Poor training. Well, you may not want to blame it on the employee if something's not going well. You may want to look at the system first. And if you have employees that could be high performing if they were properly trained and they're not because they were poorly trained, that's on you. Lack of respect for employees' time. Some managers feel that you're theirs, that you can work whatever weekends, work long with little notice. People have lives to live today, and people have expectations about some ability to manage their time effectively. And if you're not respecting that, then there's always somewhere else, especially if you're good at what you do in construction. Lack of justice and unfair reward system. So if you, and I'll talk about this in the next slide when we flip it around, but if you are rewarding employees that aren't really that good and employees that are really that good, they're going to see it very quickly and they're not going to be happy about it. So if you don't have a fair reward system, or a reward system that if they actually achieve what they needed to achieve that doesn't reward them, that's going to be a big negative. So you want to make sure that your reward systems are well done, well executed, well followed up on, are as objective as possible, and that they're not based on something that is outside that employee's control, that they have no control of. Senior management should ensure they take the time to get to know their employees. And this is not just the direct manager. Direct manager for sure needs to get to know their employees. In construction, that's probably not such a big deal because you have plenty of opportunities usually for your direct manager, whoever that may be, to interact with. But going up a couple of levels, maybe not so much. And I think employees really appreciate when senior management takes the time to actually get to know them a little bit. They put time aside. So let's take a look at actually talking about that in the positive, because poor management practices, all these ones, they're pretty negative, and that's what drives people away. So it's good to understand that. Then you just have to look at, well, what can we do? And really, you're flipping them around. What's the opposite? Well, if we develop effective, well-managed teams, teams that work together, collaborate, engage, challenge each other, are not afraid to question each other's actions, don't make it personal, that make it for the betterment of the project and the betterment of the job, then that's going to have a good that's going to create a good environment that's very satisfying and motivating and has high intrinsic value for the people working on it. You need to meet with your employees frequently and provide feedback. So if you've got some sort of reward system and it's like the yearly reward where people meet with you once a year, that's not very good because you don't get feedback. You want to have feedback that is constant, like 6 weeks, 4 weeks, depends how many employees you have reporting to you, that's informal, that you take the time for, that you get to know those employees really well, especially the direct reports. That's really important in that case. So having your managers well trained to be able to put time aside to actually engage with those employees, it helps ensure that they're going to stick around and that they're not going to leave so easily, because you're going to have a better pulse of what's going on, what their sentiments are. And if you've gotten rid of that environment of fear, you'll get a lot more feedback on what their perception is on the business. And you can get a lot of good tips from the people that are right on the front lines, which is lacking in a lot of businesses where the managers think they know best. Generally, the managers don't know best. The best of managers know best how to get information from their employees and who they're managing so they can more effectively put together a strategy to make continuous improvement in the company. Use OKRs, and basically that is objectives and key results. So if we have clarity on the goals of what needs to be done and the key results that we're after, that's pretty easy in construction. What do we got? We got time, we got cost, we got quality, we got scope, we've got safety. What are our key results that we're after, and the objectives as a team? What are we after? And we should be also in construction thinking very much in terms of teams, how well we work together, how well we collaborate, how well we engage, and that will also help us to better retain our best employees, because typically high performers are very goal oriented. When there's lack of transparency, as I said in the last slide, you have employees that, well, then the best employees, they kind of get misguided and sort of bored and they look elsewhere. Provide feedback that is encouraging, not negative, fearful kind of feedback. And if it has to be, it's not that you're going to be dishonest about it. You're certainly going to be, if something's not going well, you want to give that feedback to the employee. But if you give it in a way that is that employee feels it's for their benefit, that you want them to improve, then you're on to something. And the best employees, they do want to get better. And so if you're giving that in a positive way to help them improve themselves so that they can have stellar careers, they're going to like that. On the other hand, if you're making it always negative and you're framing it in a negative way and you make it personal, which a lot of managers tend to do, that is a big time flag of problem. So that would be an area that you really want to improve upon if you're not doing that. An environment of opportunity. Nothing better than going into a company when I'm doing consulting and I see that they have employees that have been there 2 years, 6 months, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, long stretches, and maybe they started as a laborer and they went up the different positions. They did some extra education, there was opportunities for them, and I've seen it where you've got somebody that was a laborer 25 years ago is now a vice president. And that can be really, really encouraging to a lot of people within the organization. They see what we call an internal labor market built into the company, and that is going to do a lot to retain your best employees because they can see a pathway to getting better. And you can develop training programs that tie to that and help that pathway, where you can put high performers into those training programs so that they can move more readily to those particular areas. So you're rewarding good work. and develop those systems and training for growth. So connecting the dots with those elements and ensuring where you're weak. So instead of blaming the employee for what's went on, as I said in the previous slide, start looking at, all right, well, so something's wrong in our system. Edwards Deming would say, when we talk about lean manufacturing, we get into lean construction, it's the problem's not the individual. Look to the system first. All right, always look to the system first before you look to the individual. I think that should have said empathy and understanding, not empath, but empathy and understanding. Like I said, when you're giving feedback, if you show empathy, or if your employee comes to you and they have some issue with something, some personal issue, if you help them out, they will always remember that. They will not forget that. That's been my experience. And the same goes, I could flip it around. If you don't show empathy, they will always remember that too. And that'll make a difference. I don't mind leaving this company. They really didn't care about me. I don't care about them. I'm out of here. But if you show empathy, then you're kind of building this sort of big, happy family kind of organization where you've got a positive, proactive, collaborative culture, as opposed to the dog-eat-dog type company, which is you're only as good as what you just did yesterday. Ensure there is procedural and distributive justice. So this is what I was referring to on the previous slide. If you're going to have a reward system in place, you better make sure that it's fair. If it's not fair, then right away your employee will say, well, this wasn't distributed properly. There's something wrong with the process. That's how we discuss things in HR when we're talking about procedural and distributive justice. So that means we've got to have systems in place that we set IKOs, OKRs, objective key results, so that we set them the right way and that the employees know what they need to do. And then when they've achieved it, they know they've achieved it. There's clarity there. There's clarity on what they need to do. And if they don't achieve it, there's also a good understanding. Then we can dig into what were the roadblocks for them and help them for the next time. So you want to ensure there's procedural distribution, especially your high performers. They're going to see that right away. And that's going to be really a disincentive, a demotivator for them if you don't have that. Senior management needs to make the time to get to know their employees. You need to take some time, get to know your employees, and do management by wandering around. That's what HP, Hewlett-Packard used to do, and they used to walk around their factories. They used to get to know the employees. They used to ask questions, and you'd have a sense of what's going on. I think far too often today we have executives that they'll do a town hall and they'll do the occasional sort of large meeting with questions, but you never see them any other times. And that is not a good situation. You want to go out to the site. You want to chat a little bit. You want to get to know your employees, and they respect that. I always remember I had a student that at University of Toronto that worked for Ford in Mexico, and he was telling me how the president at Ford of Mexico would phone the employee, and they had like hundreds of employees. They would take the time to phone that employee on their birthday and wish them a happy birthday, right? And he said, what a difference. Everybody felt so good hearing from the president on their birthday. It was just a little gesture, and you know what? It might take, that president's got to take 5 5-minute calls or 5 3-minute calls, whatever it was, to do that, but every day. So it's a habit. It's definitely a system, but it definitely won the respect of their employees. They felt that they were valued in that respect. So think about that. I think if the senior president at the president of Mexico Ford could take the time to do that, I think most companies it could be done. Maybe not a Walmart or something, but I think it could be done, or at least at a higher level that would really sort of garner those people's respect and feel valued. So those are the reasons why construction businesses fail when they can't retain the best people. And construction industry today, it is difficult to hire people, as we were saying in the previous video. But once we get you hired, we want to retain you. And the best people working in the best company with a culture that is positive and proactive in this way, it's going to be a very successful business in the long run. So I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon. Oh, if you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe and click the notifications, and then you'll be notified of upcoming videos that relate as we build this construction community. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.